Today we're going to tackle the vertical position of the waistline and the hem and all the rest of the pink zone adjustments, as well as some body specific adjustments you may need that are also in the pink zone. Let's get started by looking at the waistline. If you've got a waist that is defined on your pattern, meaning, it curves, I'm going to just draw a different side seam. Let's say your side seam is shaped like this. Okay. And whether it's printed on the pattern or not, wherever that smallest measurement is, where the side seam comes in like that, that needs to agree with your smallest measurement. And the way you're going to adjust that is by creating a guideline. I would say on a full-size pattern, maybe an inch above the waistline. I'm going to just do a 1/2 inch here because this is small. All right. And let's say that when you look at the way your half muslin is fitting you, if the smallest part of your pattern or your muslin is below your waist, you're going to have to lift it up. And if it's above your smallest part, you're going to have to lower it. If you're raising it up, you're going to draw a second guideline, the amount that you need to raise. Let's say it's that much, 1/2 inch. You're going to cut along the first line, and then you're just going to slide it up to get rid of the amount that you need to raise the waistline into position. I never like to touch the exact waistline position, so I'm not going to cut on the waistline position. I'm going to cut somewhere above it so I can pull it up to where it needs to be. Now, if I was lowering it, I would do the exact same thing, except instead of drawing a line here, I would tape paper, underneath the top section, and then I would drop it the amount I need. So let me show you that. Now again, anytime you're adding paper, continue your center front and center back lines down so you have something to line up the lower section with. Now I would just mark the amount I need to add. So let's say it's 3/8 of an inch that I need to pick it up. Okay, and then you're just going to tape it back into position along that line. So you can see now I've lengthened the area. You're either going to pleat up above the waist or you're going to let it down by slashing and spreading. So slash and overlap to shorten it, slash and spread to lengthen it. And then, you might want to just come in here and smooth out your side seam. Now, when do you not need to worry about your waistline? If you have a pattern that's shaped like this, you can see here, let's pretend this is the entire pattern. Okay. There really is no defined waist on this pattern. You don't need to worry about adjusting the waistline because it really doesn't matter where it is. You are going to make sure it's long enough when we get to the hem, but if there's no defined waist, then you don't need to worry about it. But if there is a waist dart, that you do need to change. But the cool thing about a waist dart is you can just redraw it. So let's say I had a waist dart here. I'm just going to draw a real simple, little waist dart. Let's pretend this is my waist dart, like this. All right, so let's pretend my pattern had a waist dart that looked like this. So that would mean, even though there was no curve on the side seam, that would mean that's where the waist needed to be. If your waist is higher or lower than that, all you have to do is redraw this waist dart. Like literally, matter of fact, you don't even need to redraw it. All I would do, let's say we need to move it up a little. Let's say our actual waist is right here. Let's pretend that's where my waist is. This is where the center of the waist dart is. I'm going to draw a box around it and I'm going to move it just like I moved the bust dart. Okay, so all I have to do now is cut this out and slide it up. Okay, so I'll pick this little waist dart out and let's just move it up to where it needs to go, like that. And then obviously I'm just going to fill in the space at the hem to make it match again. So basically I'm just going to fill in the space. There you go. So now I've moved the waist dart into position. Sometimes there's no shaping at the side seam and it's accomplished by a waist dart. That's how you can move the waist dart. Another thing to consider is you don't have to use the waist dart. So when I get to talking about ease at the end, just know that these waist darts are optional. Now we're going to tackle the hem. I feel really excited about this because I love how my pattern's coming out. I'm adjusting things from the top, working down, and I don't have to rework. So now let's take a look at the hem. Depending on the style garment you're working with, you may be able to lengthen or shorten the hem right at the hem edge. Other patterns might need to be adjusted near the waistline. Let me show you the difference. Let's pretend this pattern has a straight hem like this. Okay, so you can see here, if I wanted to lengthen or shorten the position of the hem, the first thing I'm going to do obviously is look in the mirror and see if I need more length, if it's too long, or if I'm changing the style and I want to make it longer and shorter. Determine how much of a change you want to make, and then for a straight edge like this, you can simply either lengthen or trim away. Let's start with lengthening the pattern. For lengthening the pattern, you really want to lengthen the pattern as much as you need, even if it's only an inch or two, because it may be that having the garment be just an inch or two shorter is not going to be as flattering. So what you would do is you would measure down from the hem, and let's say we just wanted to add an inch. And for this half scale, I'm going to pretend an inch is a half an inch. I'm literally just going to use my ruler and draw a line and then continue my center front or center back down like this and like this. So you can see this is very simple because it's a straight rectangular hem. If I add to the front, make sure you add exactly the same amount to the back at the side seam. It really doesn't matter if you add more at center back though. The only thing that has to match exactly at the hem is what you add at the side seam. So just for ha-has, let me show you here. Here's my back. All right, so let me get rid of some of this extra paper. So in this example, I would have to add the half an inch here because I did it in the front. Okay, maybe I want it to be a tad longer at center back to cover my butt. So I could actually make this one, we'll make this almost an inch, right? And then what you would do is you would create a curved hem that just gradually gets right to it, and I would put them next to each other so you have a good transition from front to back. Okay, so you can see that you can make it longer at center back because this sews to the center back. You could also make the center front longer if you needed to as well. Just remember, the side seams need to match. So that's how you would lengthen on a simple straight hem like this. And if you were going to shorten, and just to make it nice and easy here, I'm going to just cut what I added off so it's not confusing. Okay, if you need to shorten, you would do the opposite. Let's say, just to make it interesting, you needed to shorten it up at the side seam, but you wanted to leave the length at center, front, and back. You could do that. And the easiest way to do that is put your pieces together right on the edge like this, so they're matching, and then mark what you want to take off at the side seam. Let's say we want to take off 3/4 of an inch at the side seam. Then you could gradually bring yourself down to the center back. Now the thing about doing this though is you want to make sure you're straight and perpendicular to your center front and center back for at least an inch or two probably 2 inches, because if you come in hot, it's going to create a V shape. Now, if you want a V shape, that's fine, but if you want it to be a smooth curve, make sure you've got some straightness, and then make sure you have a nice straight transition, and then you can shorten over here, and maybe you just want to shorten it like this and make a little bit of a shirt tail hem effect. You can do that, or you can shorten the whole hem. But my point is, the side seams need to match. And if you're working with a straight hem and you want to add a detail, or if you want to just shorten the whole thing, you can just cut it off of the actual pattern piece. Now remember, you have hem allowance to consider, so make sure you consider that when you're deciding how much shorter you want to make it. So there would be a completed shortened hem. I've cut off the extra. I wanted to show you this example specifically because I was working on a top and I had it all done. It had buttonholes, it had all the details, and then I looked in the mirror and it was too long. I looked in the mirror trying it on before I did the hem, and I thought it was too long at the side seams, so I just whacked the whole hem off like 3 inches. And then when I put it back on, it was too short at center, front, and back. So make sure you really consider when you're shortening your pattern that you need it to be a similar amount of shortness around the whole garment. It is okay to make it longer center, front, and back as long as you have a 90-degree angle at your center, front, and back so you don't create a V. So that's how you shorten your pattern. Remember, you have to include hem allowances. Don't cut it too short because then you're going to be sad because you can't tape the fabric back on. So that's how you lengthen and shorten your hem. I do want to caution you. If you put your muslin on and you think it's only, a half an inch, inch and a half, or even 2 inches shorter all the way around, I think I would wait until you get into your final garment before you cut that off. I've also made the mistake of just trimming a little bit off that I thought I didn't need, but then in the end, I did want to have it there. So the goal of getting your hem into the correct position is to really make sure you have enough fabric, so by lengthening it, or if it's just really too long, that's how you lengthen and shorten the hem on a simple, okay. That's how you can lengthen the That's how you can lengthen and shorten the hem at the hem when you have a simple straight hem and you're not losing any details. And as a matter of fact, I just showed you how you can add a detail. Now let me show you how you can lengthen and shorten the hem if you have something you don't want to fuss with at the hem. So we're going to use these as an example. We have a shirt tail hem pattern we're working on, and this is a little bit more work to shorten it at the hem because you'd have to measure all the way along to either add or shorten. It's easier to do it within the pattern. So in this case, what you would do to lengthen or shorten is you would find your waist, and then below the waist, let's use a different color. You're going to want to draw a guideline, just like we did when we were adjusting the waist. And then to shorten it, then to lengthen it, what you would do is you would cut on that line. And then you would add some paper to the top portion like this. Okay, and then what you would do is you would decide how much you want to add. So in this case, let's add, I don't know, we can add a lot because, okay. So in this case, let's add 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to draw another guideline there. That's 3/4 of an inch away. And I'm going to continue my center front right down. Okay. Then I'm going to tape the lower section right back on. And you can see I've lengthened my shirt pattern without fussing at the hem. This is really helpful when you've got a shaped hem. So all I have to do now is just re-establish this part of my side seam like that. So that's how you would lengthen. To shorten, you're going to do the opposite. So again, you're going to find, wherever your waist is. Then you would draw yourself a guideline below it. Now, in this case, you're going to decide how much you need to shorten it. Let's say we wanted to shorten it a whole inch. Let's say this was a really long shirt. So I'm going to make my inch. Well, all right. So I'm shortening. Okay. All right, so then you need to decide how much you're going to shorten it and draw a second guideline. I'm using an inch for the example because it's so small, but this would be where you want to get rid of, like if you need to get rid of like 3 or 4 inches, you can draw that distance from your first line. Then what you do is you cut the first line and just slide the top part of the pattern down so it matches. And you can see what's happening here is I have a little truing up issue because when you're taking out a significant amount of length, it usually works out that your side seam needs a little truing up. But it's not a big deal. You're just going to stick some paper there. You know, and just reestablish. I might trim a little bit off here, add a little bit there just to make it as non-invasive as possible. Okay, and then you've got a shortened pattern. Now, I want to caution you when you're shortening your pattern, whether you're doing it at the hem or doing it within the pattern, if you only have a half an inch, you know, an inch, even 2 inches, I might wait until I get into my final garment to make that choice because sometimes fabrics hang differently and you might want the option of having a little extra length. You can always trim it off of your final garment. So I would say as a general rule, if you have to lengthen, guess up a little. You know, if you think you want it longer, you think you want it 2 inches longer, maybe give 2.5 inches. And if you want to shorten it, and if it's only a tiny amount, leave it. If you've got a significant amount, either shorten it at the hem or within the pattern. So that's how you deal with your hem. And I just showed you how to cut out that waist dart to move it to agree with your waistline if you've got a waist dart and it's lower or higher than your waistline. If you adjust the length of the hem within the pattern, you're going to have the same situation where you're going to have to true up your dart. What you would do at this point, because it's already in the right spot because you adjusted it for the waist, is you would just reconnect the tips of the darts to the center of the dart. And let me just show you what I mean by that. Here's a waist dart that is now messed up because I adjusted the hem. Remember, we already adjusted the center of the waist dart to agree with where your waist is, but now the bottom of the dart is kind of screwed up. All you have to do here is reestablish the legs from the original center and the original bottom. And I'll use a different color so you can see. So all you would really do is just redraw those in. This is the example where I raised the waist dart because the shaping needed to agree with where the waist is, but I didn't need to adjust the waistline itself because there was no shaping on the side seam. And then here is the waist dart that I adjusted after shortening the hem. So you can see that you may have to raise it up, but then also fix the bottom of it if you adjust for the hem within the pattern. So that's how you deal with your waist darts. All right, so here's the good news. We've done the waist, we've done the hem, we have adjusted waist darts after messing them up by adjusting within the pattern, and now all that's left is to work on the ease in the garment. And what I want to talk about here is, remember in the blue zone, we took the time to measure the pattern from center front over to the armhole, and then we made sure that the high bust and the upper back were correct widthwise, and also we added safety seam allowances to the entire side seam. So at this point, the rest of the pink zone should be fairly easy for you to work with because all you have to do is let out or take in your side seams to get the ease correct. What I want to point out to you here is you may only need to let out the front or the back or you may need to do those, let them out or take them in different amounts. So don't assume that if your top is tight, you just need to let out both the front and back. For women, it's very common to need more room in the front than in the back. So it may be a situation where you just need to let out the front side seam a little bit to get the ease you need throughout your garment. So please let me know if you have any questions about that. So wrapping up the pink zone adjustments, we're going to talk about some body specific adjustments you may need. And the first one we're going to talk about is related to ease. So if you've let out your side seams and everything is looking good, but it's feeling very snug from the waist down because you have a prominent tummy, there is a QR code in the PDF that will lead you right to the prominent tummy adjustment. So that gives you the opportunity to adjust your pattern from within to create ease across the whole front of the pattern to make room for your tummy without adjusting the back. Then I cover how to do a prominent shoulder blade adjustment in the back, because if you have prominent shoulder blades, it's going to create tightness across your back. And a lot of times people have asked me why their back bodice isn't fitting, and they assume it's because they have like a high round back or a curvature to their spine. But really what it is their shoulder blades are more pronounced and you need a little bit more fabric to get around that. So the prominent shoulder blade adjustment is kind of like a mini full bust adjustment in the back. Then I have a few different videos all organized for you if you have a sway back. A sway back is when you have a more than average curve at the small of your back. And what happens is the fabric tends to puddle there. So everything looks great in the front. The side seams hang nicely, but then as you get towards the center back, you have extra fabric. So there's a few different ways that you can do a sway back adjustment, and I've included 3 different tutorials that can show you how to take care of this issue. In these tutorials, I explained that these techniques were for patterns that don't have center back seams. Because the center back seam stays straight, you can still do them on patterns that have center back seams. So one of them is if you have less than 2 inches of extra fabric puddling at your center back. A second one is if you have a significantly more amount of fabric that you need to get rid of. And then I just show you how to adjust your pattern if you have a center back seam and you want to shape that center back seam. So the difference is 2 of the adjustments keep the center back seam straight. The third actually creates a shaped center back seam. So you have all of those options there. Depending on what your actual fitting needs are, one of them may work better than the others. And the primary difference between them is how much you actually have to remove. I would say if you have a very significant amount of puddling, you would use the method that uses multiple slash marks to get rid of the extra, or do the method where you have a center back seam and you create a shaped center back seam. This completes the pink zone. I'm super excited. I've had so much fun working on this PDF. This PDF has been in the works for a month. I've been adding to it every week, every time I've given you more information, and it's now available in the description below, so check that out. Next week, I'm going to show you how to adjust your sleeves so they agree with all the changes you made to the armholes in the blue and pink zone. It's going to be a really fun episode, and I will have a final PDF to go along with that. So thank you guys so much for fitting along with me. If you have any questions or comments, please post those below and I will help you. Also, if you're enjoying my content, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me grow. I hope you all have a great day, and thank you for watching.